Welcome back to Sprague Homestead. So today we're going to cover how we prepare our homestead for the winter. Now, a local homesteader in the area that also has another channel asked, how do you guys get prepared? Because they're starting to get prepared probably for their first winter on their fresh homestead. So today we're going to cover all the main things we do in order to get our homestead ready for the deep slumber of winter. Food, water, shelter are everything you need for every living thing on your homestead for the winter. Now, every homestead is going to be a little bit different, but I can tell you there's going to be one common thing, one living creature on the homestead that every single one of us are going to have, and that is people. So for the people, for the homestead, for the shelter part of it, which I think probably is going to be the hardest one to come by, because you can always buy food, you can always buy water, but a lot of times you can't buy shelter. It's going to be either a home or an RV. Some of us choose to join homesteading on an RV level for the first couple of years, and really the things you want to do to prepare your RV is probably to get as much food as you can get stored, get as much water as you can store, and then when it gets down towards freezing, you're going to disconnect your RV or really insulate the pipes, whether that's sewer or water, and get those ready so they don't freeze. Where we are here, we can get below zero for days on end, and a lot of times that will bust pipes if they're not insulated well, or if it gets too cold, you're still going to get broken pipes. If it gets, we've had minus 30 before for a week here on one winter, and so a lot of times there you've got to protect everything for food, water, and that to get for the RV. Now for your house, let's say there, even in the RV, you're going to need some kind of heat. That may be a propane heater, it could be an electric heater. For us, it is a wood stove, so we have to have at least probably about 2 cords of wood split, ready to go, stacked over here into our wood bins. And if you want to see what kind of wood bins are, I'll throw up a link up there on how we built our wood bins. Simple, pretty affordable, but they do last. Basically, I think ours are about 6 years old now, other than we replaced the tarps. So once you take care of your heat, our food, we a lot of times grow all year long. We grow like meat chickens, we do rabbits, turkeys, you name it, we're gonna have it here on the homestead for protein. We also grow all year long in our greenhouses. We typically grow as much as we can there for our self-storage. So we have root crops like carrots, beets, we have leafy greens like collards. You can call radishes maybe a root crop. You can do corn, we've tried that, peppers, tomatoes, squash, you name it. We've probably grown all of it in our domes and our hoop greenhouses here. A lot of that stuff we put away for the winter. We a lot of times can it or freeze it. We have both available. That's probably something you want to do. Now for water, we have our own well here on the property, so we typically have usually try to keep about 1,000 gallons on hand at all times. All of our lines are below 30 inches into the ground, and that's just to keep them from freezing during winter. And that comes all the way from the well all the way down into the shop down here where our cistern is. Now, of course, for heat, I mentioned firewood, and then also for power, since we are solar, we keep everything maintained there with our batteries. We always have power there, but there are days that we'll have to come out and scrape off our panels, keeping the sun off of those, or getting the sun onto them, really, getting the ice off and snow off. That may take twice a day, you never know, on those really heavy snow days. In order to make power, you've got to scrape them off and be ready. So I think that would hopefully cover up the human piece of how we prepare. Now, where we are, you never know. We live off a Forest Service road that we have to maintain. We have gotten 18 inches of snow overnight, so we typically, on hand for everything here that I'm going to mention, we have at least a 2-week supply of food, water, everything else available. Now we can always pump our water itself, and everything else on the homestead is all run underground, so we never really have to worry about water too much. But in the case of food, you'll want to make sure that we have everything 2 weeks available, and that goes for every living animal on the farm. 2 weeks, you never know what's going to happen. So I'd mentioned some of the protein sources that we grow for ourselves, the people. That means we have poultry year round. Now, all of our poultry have some kind of structure that they can go into. A lot of them are in some of our houses here, They do have a door there that protects them in, and they're also in individual pens or cages inside of each of the houses. Now when it comes to your poultry itself, you're going to want to have something that they can go into every night. So the shelter part, one, is going to keep them out of the weather, but you also need to have them in something that is going to well protect them. During the summer, you're not going to get a lot of things that are probably going to come around looking for food, but as the food source dries up, as winter gets closer and deep into winter with the snow, you're going to have things like bobcats, mountain lions, bears, I mean, you name it. If it's wanting something like a chicken or a duck for winter, it's going to come looking for food. So you want to give them a spot that is secure and that they cannot see it. If a predator walks by and can see your birds, you can imagine what they're thinking. Tasty. So remember, chicken wire will only keep chickens in. A lot of times it will not keep a predator out, whether that is like a bobcat, a bear, or even a bird of prey. They can go through that chicken wire. So give them some kind of a small building. It doesn't have to be a big monster like this. It can easily be something small like this little dog house here that we converted into a chicken house for a pair of our Wyandottes. Now as far as food, a lot of times there you can feed them scraps or anything else. We normally keep them on a store-bought feed, but we keep everything into a trash can. Now something like this that's simple, it's a metal trash can. You can buy it basically almost any store, whether it's a home improvement, grocery store itself. These trash cans here, these are 31-gallon metal trash cans with lids. These can hold about 150 pounds of feed. So 150 pounds usually comes in either 40 or 50 pound bags. So that's either about 3.5 40-pound bags or 3 50-pound bags. Now a lot of these trash cans will keep out mice or anything else. They won't chew through metal, but they can chew through plastic. So these metal trash cans, which are only 20 or 30 bucks a piece, can hold a lot of feed, especially if you don't have that many birds. But you can keep everything secured. And these won't rust. These are galvanized. They will not rust through going into winter. So you can set them outside if you need to, or just keep them in the building itself. And lastly, now I've covered this in another video. I'll throw a link up to that there. But for your poultry stuff, you know, when you get down into the freezing temperatures, water troughs, buckets itself will freeze. We typically move all of the poultry over to these rubberized buckets. Now you can buy these at most feed stores, or you can get them online. The advantage of these is they will be able to crack out the ice. So if everything freezes, you can see that they can squish and twist and everything else. They will break all the ice out as you need to give your birds something to drink for at least a little bit before it refreezes. But they're easy on the people. You can take them, you can always flip them over if you need to and stomp on them. They won't break like plastic will. It won't get brittle. These rubberized bowls are the way to go for winter. All right, so now when it comes to the goats that we have, we normally winter about 20 to 30 goats somewhere in there. We normally put up about 12 to 13 ton of hay every summer to be able to feed the goats all year long and into next summer where they run it out. Then we can release them out to the pastures after they've grown back up. So each of our barns has hay into it. We split it roughly equally, so you get somewhere around 6 to 7 ton in each barn. That way we can split it up between the goats. Now of course in one we have our bucks and some of our does, and then on the other one is all of our does. Now of course the barns cover them for shelter itself. They can go inside, we can close them in with doors to protect them. They also have livestock guard dogs that do live with them full time, so they offer a level of protection that you don't need for a door. On the water itself, each barn is plumbed off the main cistern down at the shop. So that water again comes in under 30 inches into the ground. That way it runs all year long, and there are drain back valves on each of the water sources here, the spigots. Now for them, I don't transfer them mostly over to a rubber bucket. I will continue to use a 1 gallon plastic bucket like this. Now you don't have to use a rubber on this. Some of them do, some of them don't. These though are smooth on the inside, so you can turn them over and use like a piece of 2x4 or something else. Don't use a hammer, use something blunt like a big piece of 2x4. Just kind of tap it on the outside and typically the ice will fall out, and then you can refill these. Now you're probably going to have to fill these at least once a day, especially in winter. It might be even twice a day, just kind of depends on the weather. But there again, you can flip them over, tap them all the way around, ice and water will come out, you can refill them with water, and they're all good to go. Now, speaking of the dogs themselves, the dogs get also a mix of dog food. So each barn where the dogs are located, they have a localized trash can. Again, it's a metal trash can of mixed dog food. That way we're always there. Now, when we mix dog food, we probably have around 6 to 7 weeks available when the cans are completely full. As we get towards the end of those cans, right around the 2-week mark, we go and buy the next version, or the next mixture, I guess, of dog food. Get all those bags. We keep them stored until we run out. But if we ever have any reason we run out, we always have that next set available that we can immediately bring out, refill a can. So we always have 2 weeks available of dog food for any reason. Now, outside of the dog food that we do buy, they can also eat anything, pretty much the protein we do. So anything rabbit, chicken, turkey, duck, anything like that that is in the freezer or either canned, we can always bring that out as a supplement or a complete meal. You can just warm it up in the house, bring it out, and they will gladly eat up some fresh protein that you brought in from the house. Now, there's only going to be pretty much one exception of food that is not stored in a metal trash can to keep rodents out, and that is going to be pallets of rabbit food. So we typically buy all of our rabbit food in a pallet because we get a discount on it, and we can go through the volume of it. It's about 40 bags per pallet that we buy, and it takes us about 6 to 8 weeks to go through this amount of food for the rabbits we have here on the farm. Now, we will store it out here in one of our barns on the pallet. We split it up into halves, so we normally get it 42 a pallet. We get it home, we take 20 off, put it on a pallet, which leaves us an extra 20 on there, and we stack both pallets on top. This is a little bit easier to handle, it's not as much weight, and the tractor can easily move that. Each pallet of 20 bags is roughly, about 1,000 pounds, so the tractor only needs to do that. Now, this stuff here, the rodents in the barn really do not want to mess with the rabbit feed. It doesn't have corn in it, which is something they really love. Mice and everything else loves corn, which they don't have. And I'll tell you, I have 3 or 4 or 5 cats out here pretty much all the time in the barns living out here that keeps pretty much rodent control under control. There really isn't a lot out here for them to come into, so the cats do a pretty good job of keeping my barns maintained for rodent control. And their food also is out here, just basically a cat food from the store, but I give them a little breakfast and at dinner. They can eat out here on the hay bales, and then they pretty much stay out here all the time and roam the woods looking for rodents or anything else they can eat.
All right, so on the rabbit front, when we're getting ready for winter, how we water our rabbits is we have a hose bib right there off the side of the shop, and we use a hose to come into the barn. One thing that I start doing, most of the year I leave the hoses out. During the winter, we actually start coiling them up in a bucket, and we put them in the shop where they'll stay above freezing, because nothing is worse than trying to water something with a frozen hose. So we do that. We do, at least in the rabbit barns, we keep the water bottles. Now, I know a lot of people switch out to Crocs, and we do in the overflow out in the tent. For the most part, I move everybody to Crocs so that I can just, knock the ice out, put fresh water in it, or put hot water in over the ice and get it to melt out that way. With the rabbit barns, typically we can keep them anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees warmer than outside temperature. So we don't get a lot of frozen bottles. It kind of depends on the winter. What we start doing is we fill just enough for them to drink overnight and then give them some more the next day. That way we're not dealing with an entire massive frozen bottle. I also take out some hot water, and what typically freezes first is those nozzles because they're metal, and we'll unscrew them, put them in some hot water, rinse them back and forth and get all the ice out of them, and then crack the bottle enough to get the ice out. So we do try and keep our bottles, if we're getting really, really cold, I do have at least an extra set for each barn. So what we'll do is we will pull all the frozen bottles in, put them by the wood stove, bring new bottles out, and then as those thaw, we come out and we swap them out. It doesn't happen to us a lot, but we have had those winters where we get, well below zero, and there's no way to keep everybody in water during that kind of thing. Now, if it's really frozen, we'll come out a couple times a day to make sure everybody's got water. Now for feed, I think Kaden mentioned we try and keep at least 2 weeks on hand at any given time. I keep all my feed in the barns in trash cans, and full trash cans in the barns give me 2 weeks in the barn. We go through a lot of rabbit feed, so we buy ours by the pallet, so the extra feed gets stored out in the barn. I don't know if Kaden showed you that or not. Now for hay, if we're feeding hay, we actually keep it out in totes. So we bring a tote down here, and the totes can even sit outside. They usually don't have any trouble with the moisture. Or if I've got some storage in there, like where I keep my nest boxes, if the nest boxes are in use, then I'll keep the hay storage actually in the barns. That's kind of the big thing for us. If it's going to be really, really cold, I make sure that we keep some straw out in the barn, because if we get below 0, usually I'll pack a layer of straw in the cages to keep them up off the floor wire. The other big thing is we clean everything in the fall. So for us, a lot of times it's really hard to clean cages in the winter. So going into winter, I want the cleanest environment I can get. So I've just finished up this last week pressure washing all of our cages. So we go through, we pressure wash, we patch any floors that look like it needs it. We'll sand down and paint any floor with a Rust-Oleum product that's starting to look a little rusty. All the floor mats, all the resting boards get pulled out. They get pressure washed, dried, disinfected, and either put back in the cages, or I've got some extra in an extra tote. This time of year, we're also getting pine cones that drop, so we go ahead and collect the fresh pine cones for chew toys through the winter. We get all of our carriers pressure washed, put away, and we also go through and disinfect every single nest box, whether we just disinfected it last time or not. They all get pressure washed this time of year, bleached, left in the sun, bleached again, just to make sure everything is as clean as possible, because sometimes in the winter we don't get to do a really deep clean between litters like I like to do, because sometimes we've got a couple feet of snow. That's kind of the big stuff for the rabbits. So it's food, water, shelter, like Kaden said, and the barns are doing fine. We're not having any trouble there. So that is pretty much it for us.
Now, covering all the animals with the 3 subjects of food, water, shelter, that is probably going to leave us with our last thing, and that is preparing equipment for winter. Now, a lot of times we won't utilize the ATVs or the tractor a lot over winter. We utilize one that has a snow blower if we had a lot of snow, and if we don't, well, a lot of times the tractors don't get used. So for those, including the ATV, the trucks, or anything else, any kind of machinery that is going to be stored or has limited use over the winter, you want to prepare it for storage. So that means whatever the fuel is, whether it's gas or diesel, put a stabilizer in it. And for there, a lot of times we won't use stuff for 3 to 4 months. So I will double up the minimum requirement, which will give me approximately 6 months of storage on the fuel. I will allow that to the piece of equipment, whether that's a tractor or ATV or truck, that'll run enough to get that fresh stabilized fuel all the way up through to stabilize the whole system, from the fuel tank, fuel pump, the fuel lines, up to the carburetor, injectors, whatever it is. Now, you can also grease all of the greasable joints, whether that's suspension or grease zerks or anything else. Do an oil change on them, because oil becomes acidic as it breaks down over use. So do a fresh oil and oil change. Do the air filter. You need to take it out, inspect it, clean it, or replace it, whatever it's going to be. Any kind of cleaning from there, and then I try to give everything a fresh wash, especially if it's going to sit inside and collect dust. I'm going to give it a fresh wash. You can just use something like a car wash detergent. It's pretty much safe for anything. It could be a tractor, ATV, truck, car, anything else. Give them a fresh, clean detail. You can always vacuum it out if it's a truck or something else, and then pretty much store it for everything there. Now beyond that, the last thing you're going to do is basically top off anything you need. If you need propane, top off your propane tanks. Typically for us, we try to do that before Halloween. That's usually kind of our winter cutoff, because we can get snow from Halloween on pretty much. So again, firewood, propane, any kind of water, 2 weeks worth, any kind of food, at least 2 weeks worth. Anything else you need to buy that you cannot generate or collect off of your homestead needs to have approximately 2 weeks worth. You need to do that, because you never know if winter is going to catch you in here. You may have a freak ice storm that knocks out power, anything like that. Be prepared for whatever's going to happen, because sometimes you just never know. But you got to remember, sometimes about 2 weeks worth is what you need. So hopefully that covers anything else of how we prepare the homestead ready for at least 2 weeks or more, between firewood, propane, preparing all the animals for food, water, shelter, and lastly, definitely make sure you take care of yourself for food, water, shelter. And if you have any other questions on anything I really didn't cover well enough or didn't cover at all, you know, down to put them in the comments. I'll take care of you. That's it for this time from Sprague Homestead. Happy homesteading.